there, hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Discourses. Today we are wrapping up Book 1 of the Discourses. Today we're looking at the 58th chapter, which concludes the first book of the Discourses. The title of 58 is "The multitude is wiser and more constant than the prince." So therefore, it's fitting that the discussion of Republic ends with a discussion of the multitude and its wisdom, or the wisdom of the multitude, right? So let's go look into this. This is going to be a little longer than the last two chapters, so let's go look into it. Nothing is more vain and inconsistent than the multitude, so are Titus Livy and all other historians affirm. Right, this is that the multitude. Livy's book 6, line 7, the famous line that he talks about is hint. That this is that chapter where he talks about the multitude, and this is the way. This is the famous line that Machiavelli himself even plays into the things. For in narrating the actions of men, it often occurs that the multitude is seen to have condemned someone to death, and then has wept for the same and greatly desired him, as the Roman people is seen to have done for Manlius Capitolinus, whom it had condemned to death and then greatly desired. Right. The words of the author are these: after there was no danger from him, desire for him soon to take hold on these people. Right. Again, this is quoted from Livy, Book 6, Chapter 2, omitting the phrase "remembering only his virtues." Right, in the Latin, it's remembering only his virtues. Elsewhere, when he shows the incidents that arose in Syracuse after the death of Hierometus, grandson of Hero, he says, "This is the nature of the multitude. Either it serves humbly, or it dominates proudly." Right. This is again. This is Livy of book 24. Again, the quote is from Latin with minor variations from Livy 24, chapter 25. Right. No, verses. This is 4 through 7 and 21, and then 25. He dealt with here. So this idea that the people are either their multitude, they're humbly, or they serve humbly, or the multitude either humbly or dominate, is double-sided. I do not know if I shall take upon myself a hard task, full of so much difficulty, that it may suit me either to abandon it with shame or continue it with disapproval, since I wish to defend a thing that, as I said, has been accused by all the writers. He's now going to defend the multitude. He's going to defend the multitude. He's going to that everyone else has condemned, as shown to be weak and problematic. He said, I'll take it. It's a hard task. It's a difficult task. In fact, this is what's so interesting here. It is province, a difficult task of province, right? He's gonna do it. It's gonna be done, but it's gonna be that other writers have done this, and a hard task of province filled with so much difficulty. That I might have to do this. He goes now. But however it may be, I do not judge, nor shall I ever judge it to be a defect, to defend any opinion with reason, without wishing to use either authority or force for it. In other words, he's going to defend it. In other words, without wishing to use either authority or force. In other words, for it. I do not judge it, however it may be. I do not judge, nor shall I ever judge it to be a defect, to defend any opinion with reason, without wishing to use either authority or force for it. In other words, thus too, I say thus, that all men, particularly, especially princes, can be accused of that defect of which the writers accuse the multitude. In other words, stop here, just a semicolon there. What is he saying? That this is true not only of, in other words, he's saying this is not only true of the multitude, this is true of all men, including princes, especially princes too, because a prince is a man as well. For any and everyone who is not regulated by laws would make the same errors as the unshackled multitude. In other words, if they're not regulated by laws, regulated by a set of principles or a set of mores, or nomos, right? Regulated by norms, regulated by laws, he says, will make the same errors as the unshackled multitude. This can easily be known because there are and have been very many princes, and the good and wise among them have been few. In other words, there's been many princes, but the good and wise among them are few. I speak of princes who have been able to break the bridle that can correct them, among whom are not those kings who arose in Egypt when, in that most ancient antiquity, the province was governed with laws, nor those who arose in Sparta, nor those who in our times in France, a kingdom that is moderated more by laws than by any other kingdom which has known, of which knowledge is had of our times. In other words, he's not speaking of these kings. He's not princes who have been able to break the bridle that can correct them are not among the kings of those other kings, the antiquities, the province of the kings of Sparta, the kings of the French kings of laws. They're governed by laws as well. These kings who arose under such constitutions are not to be put in that number, of which the very nature of every man by himself has to be considered, to see if he is like the multitude. So these kind of kings are not like those, because they have laws governing them. They're institution. They're more like offices in that sense. For one should put in the comparison a multitude regulated by laws, as they are, and the same goodness that we see to be in them will be found to be in it, the people. If the people are in other words, if the multitude is governed by laws, they will be as good as that wise prince, that good prince, or these other princes that he mentions. That is the rulers of ancient Egypt, the Spartans, and then the king of France, right? In other words, they are governed by, if you shall put the comparison of a multitude regulated by laws as they are, and the same goodness that we see to be in them will be found in it, and it will be seen to neither to dominate proudly or to serve humbly, as was the Roman people, which never served humbly nor dominated proudly while the republic lasted uncorrupted. In other words, indeed, with its orders and magistrates, it held its rank honorably. In other words, one was they were uncorrupted and they ruled under the laws. They didn't act like either lions and sheep. They acted, properly, honorably. And when it was necessary to move against someone powerful, it did so, as may be seen in Manulus and the Ten, and the others who sought to crush it. And when it was necessary to obey the dictator in the consuls for the public safety, it did so. If the Roman people desired Manlius Capitolinus after he was dead, it was no marvel, for it desired his virtues, which had been such that the memory of them brought compassion to everyone. In other words, it's no extraordinary thing that the Roman people longed for a person like manliness. They remembered his virtues in that sense. Not and he had great virtues. He also had defects, but they remember his virtues. They would have they would have had force to produce the same effect in a prince, because it was the verdict of all the writers that virtue is praised and admired also in one's enemies. And if manliness had been resuscitated among so much desire, the people of Rome would have given the same judgment on him as it did when it condemned him to death soon after it had dragged him from prison, right? Again. Oh, we got a mistake here. So, again, drove them from prison. Notwithstanding that some princes may be seen who held to be wise, have had some person killed, and then very highly desired him, like as did Alexander did Cletus, and his other friends of his, and his friends of his, and Herod did of Marianne, right? Again, this is examples like Plutarch, Alexander, Cletus saved Alexander's life in battle, but when drunk at the banquet, he disparaged Alexander and was immediately killed by him after Alexander repented and tried to kill himself. Josephus in the Jewish War, Marianne, the granddaughter of Aristobulus, the second king of Judah, was married to Herod the Great, and out of jealousy, Herod had her killed and desperately regretted doing so. Again, this is the same thing with Henry VIII with Cromwell. After he killed him, had him killed, then later he said, "Oh, she was around." Right? This is, in other words, this is not something that is extraordinary. But when our historians say that the nature of the multitude, he does not say that which it's regulated by laws, as was those Romans, but of the unshackled, as was the Syracusan, which made those errors and infiltrated and unshackled men made as Alexander the Great and Herod made in given cases. Therefore, the nature of the multitude is no more to be faulted than that of princes, because all err equally when all can err without respect. In other words, if they're ruling on their own and governed by their own thing and not ruled by law or restraint, they will all make errors in that sense. Beyond what I have said there are many examples of this, both among the Roman emperors and among the other tyrants and princes. So much inconsistency and so much variations of life are seen as may be found in any multitude. So therefore, in other words, beyond what I've said here, there's many examples both among the Roman emperors and among other tyrants and princes, right? Where there's so much inconsistency and much variation in life can be found and can be found in any multitude. The great evil tyrants, the tyrants and the great emperors, they have the same vices as the multitude, in that sense. I conclude thus, against the common opinion that says the people, that peoples, when they are princes, are varying multitude and ungrateful, as I affirm that these sins are not otherwise than in them, than in particular princes. This is going to be true. Not, in other words, human nature is the way it is. In other words, he's saying this is the argument about human nature. All right? What is true about the multitude is also true about the prince. Human nature is going to be human nature. Someone accusing people and princes together might be able to say the truth, but accepting princes, excluding the princes, accepting them, not including them, he would be deceived. For a people that commands and is well ordered will be stable, prudent, and grateful, no less than a prince, or better than a prince, even one esteemed wise. So in other words, Machiavelli, in fact, this very much echoes Aristotle, Book 3. In Book 3, he does the same thing about that. As long as the people are not slavish, they are better, they're wiser than the wise man. Right? And collectively, they're wiser than the wise man, as long as they're not slavish. That thing in middle of Book 3, where Aristotle says this. Machiavelli asserts this also. Machiavelli says, listen, that they either will be as prudent as them, or better than a prince, even one esteemed wise. On the other side, a prince unshackled from laws will be more ungrateful, varying, and imprudent than the people. In other words, he's going to be worse than the people. A prince who has been unshackled by laws, and he's going to be worse than the people. Will be more ungrateful, varying, and imprudent than the people. Thus, the variation in their proceeding arises not from a diverse nature, because it is in one mode in all, and it is therefore and if there is an advantage of good, it is in the people, but from having more or less respect for the laws within which both live. In other words, there's going to be likelihood there'd be more good people. In other words, but in other words, he's saying that what? That okay, yes, that if the people, if ordered law, not only are they good as the prince, a good prince, they can be even better than a wise prince. The prince by himself is worse than the people when they're corrupt. He's saying here, in that sense. In that sense. The variation from their proceeding arises not from a diverse nature, because it is in one mode in all. And if there is advantage of good, it is in the people, but from having more or less respect for the laws within which both live. Whoever considers the Roman people will see it to have been hostile for 400 years, it has been hostile for 400 years to the name, the kingly name, and a lover of glory and the common good of its fatherland. In other words, they hated the kingly name, the Rex, and absolute rule, and lovers of glory and fatherland for 400 years. He will see so many examples of it that testify to both one thing and the other. If anyone cites me the ingratitude that it was used against Scipio, I answer with what was discoursed on that matter above at length. Discourses 29, right? Where it was shown that the people are less ungrateful than princes. But as to prudence and stability, I say that the people are more prudent, more stable, and better judgment than a prince. Nor without cause may the voice of a people be likened to that of a god. For one sees a universal opinion produced marvelous effects on its forecast. In other words, one sees a universal opinion produced marvelous effects on its forecast, so that it appears to foresee its ills and its good by a hidden virtue. In other words, he seems to make the case that it's going to be a great virtue, a single virtue that comes in here. Okay, this is going to be painful because I made a mistake. I think there's another chapter here. Oh, I miscounted. Oh, God. Ooh, that's a big error. Ooh. I was trusting the book. Ooh, so we'll see what happens. What happens? So hidden virtue, in other words, it appears to foresee its ill by its good or hidden virtue. In other words, the people has a virtue that is not really known. It's a hidden virtue in that sense. As the judging things, if a people hear two orators who incline to different sides, they are of equal virtue. Very few times does one see it not take up the better opinion, and not persuaded of the truth that it hears. If it errs in mighty things, or those that appear useful, as was said above, right, in Discourse 130:53, often a prince errs too in his own passions, which are many more than those of the people. In other words, the people have simple passions. The prince, being greater, is going to have more complex passions. The people's passions are kind of, the ordinary person's passions are kind of ordinary. But the ambitious prince, his passions are going to be specific in one multitude. So therefore, a prince too errs in his own passions, which are many more than those of the people. It is also seen in its choices of magistrates to make a better choice by far than a prince. Nor will a people ever be persuaded that it is good to put up for dignities an infamous man of corrupt customs, of which a prince is persuaded easily in 1,000 ways. In other words, again, this is Machiavelli seems here to be echoing a kind of argument one sees in Aristotle that's developed in book 3 of the Politics, particularly like after chapter 11, 12, 13, in those books, right, those chapters there, where he has this question of the question of the people, the virtues of the people, the virtues of the many. And here Aristotle and Machiavelli seem to be agreeing here. And the prince is persuaded in ways that a people is seen to begin to hold a thing in horror and to stay with that opinion for many centuries, which is not seen in a prince. In other words, the people will begin to hold a thing in horror and stay with that opinion for hundreds of years, whereas a prince will maybe horror, but then change his mind next time, right? He sees the advantage in the bad thing, right? Of both of these two things, I wish the Roman people, by his testimony, to suffer for me. In so many hundreds of years, in so many choices of consuls and tributes, it did not make 4 choices of which it might have to repent. As I've said, it held the king's name so much in hatred that no obligation to any of its citizens who might try for that name could enable them to escape the power of the penalties, right? Remember, the Romans had this, that started with the birth of the Republic, to anyone who was, you killed. This is why Caesar gets killed, because they thought he was going to become king. Because remember, in Rome, anyone who wants to be king or to give Rome a king, they deserve death. You've been promised that you kill them. So that's the penalty of this, that they cannot escape that. To make a name for him, that to escape the proper penalties. Beyond this, one sees that cities in which peoples are princes make exceeding increases in a very brief time. When people are the princes, they make exceeding increases in a very brief time, and much greater than those that have always been made under a prince, as did Rome after the expulsion of the kings, and Athens after it was freed from the Pistastros, the tyrants, right? The tyrant of Rome that after the establishment, in other words, Athens after the Pistastros were removed, that they, in other words, Rome, after the kings expelled, and the people in multitude zoomed into greatness, right? That cannot arise from anything other than the government of the peoples are better than those of the princes. Nor do I wish my opinion to be opposed by all that our historians say of it in the text cited before, and in any other whatever. For if all the disorders of people are reviewed, again 12 discoursed on, are discoursed on, all the disorders of princes, all the glories of people, and all those of princes, the people will be seen to be far superior in goodness and glory. So let's see, what is he saying here? That's okay. That's everyone else has talked about how great the princes are and how bad the people are. Okay, let's discourse on it. Let's discourse on it, and let's discourse on it by comparing what all the he says. Let's just review it. Let all the disorders of princes, all the disorders of people are reviewed, and all the disorders of princes, all the glories of people, and we compare them. Right? We compare them, and we'll see. We take the glories of the princes and the people, the disorders and glories, and do a comparison of them, and do a sum and total of them, and we'll see that the people win. Right? If princes are superior to people in ordering laws, forming civil lives, and ordering, in other words, the people will be seen far superior in goodness and glory. If the princes are superior to people in ordering laws, forming civil lives, and ordering new statutes and orders, people are so much superior in maintaining things ordered that without doubt they attain the glory of those who ordered them. So therefore, okay, yes, that princes tend not to be good. That princes tend to be good at doing certain things, at ordering laws, forming civil lives, ordering new statutes and orders. But the people are superior in maintaining things. Machiavelli holds here. That without a doubt they attain the glory of those maintaining this. Again, this is Machiavelli makes a point that Aristotle in the beginning of book 4 does also, Politics 4. Where Aristotle says it's more difficult to maintain, to be a statesman, to be a political man, maintaining the order, preserving a order, than to establishing it. It's easier to establish. It's much easier to establish than it is to preserve, perpetuate, in that sense, perpetuate the regime, to keep it surviving, making it able to perpetuate and to perpetuate in a good way. That this is more difficult than creating, and I think this is what he's repeating here again. In 4, in sum, to conclude this matter, I say that the states of princes have lasted very long. The states of republic have lasted very long, and both have had need of being regulated by laws. So both of them have long. The states of princes have lasted long. States of republics have lasted very long. Both have had need to be regulated by laws. For a prince who can do what he wishes is crazy. A people who can do what it wishes is not wise. So therefore, in other words, a prince who can do what he wishes is crazy, and a people that can do what it wishes is not wise. If thus one is reasoning about a prince obligated to the laws, and about a people fettered by them, more virtue will always be seen in the people than the prince. If one reasons about both are unshackled, fewer errors will be seen in the people than in the prince, and those lesser and having greater remedies. In other words, they're lesser and they're greater remedies that the people have been than that of a bad tyrant in that sense. For a licentious and tumultuous people can be spoken to by a good man, and it can easily be returned to a good way. There is no one who can speak to a wicked prince, nor is there any remedy other than steal. In other words, there's no remedy other than steal the prince, a wicked prince. There's only steal. You can't reform them. From that can be made a conjecture of the importance of the illness of the one and the other. That if to cure the illness of the people, words are enough, and for the prince steel is needed, there will never be anyone who will not judge that where a great cure is needed, there are great errors. In other words, right, that's the point. In other words, the conjecture is this, that illness of the one and the other. To cure the illness of the people, words, injunctions. Now, question, is that true? I'm not sure. I think maybe that's not, that maybe Machiavelli is being a little bit disingenuous here a little bit. He's flattering the young men and their love of the Republic. But okay, let's assume that steel is needed. But wait a minute, aren't they the same? This is the thing, is that okay? If it's talking about, maybe steel is needed also. Remember that the people and the one and the many are the same. They're human. If you need steel on the one, why should you need steel on the many also? But words, maybe that's the thing. Okay. For that one can conjure the importance of the illness of one and the other, that to cure the illness of the people, words are enough. For the prince, steel is needed. There will never be anyone who will not judge that where a great cure is needed, there is also great errors. When a people is quite unshackled, the craziness it does is not feared, nor is present evil feared, but what can arise from it, since in the midst of such confusion a tyrant can arise, right? But with wicked princes, the contrary happens. The present evil is feared, and the future is hoped for, since men persuade themselves that this wicked life can make freedom emerge. Persuade themselves that his wicked life can make freedom emerge. The you here is plural, right? That's the whole thing. Since you, the plural you, right? You all, and since you all see the difference between the one and the other, since all of you see the difference between the one and the other, which is as much as between things that are and things that have to be. In other words, the difference between these things, the difference between the one and the other, as one things, the difference between things that are and the things that must be. Right? The cruelties of the multitude are great. The cruelties of the multitude are against whomever they fear will seize the common good. The cruelties of the multitude are against whomever they fear will seize the common good. Those of a prince are against whoever he fears will seize his own good. So therefore, in other words, the multitude is going to fear someone who's going to take the public good, the good of the republic, right? They will, whereas that is my good, my private good, my personal good, and my interest, right? Sees his own good. But the opinions against people arise because everyone speaks ill of the people, without fear and freely, even while they reign. other words, the people don't feel, in other words, this is interesting, that everyone speaks ill of the people without fear and freely, even while they're reigning. Princes are always spoken of with 1,000 fears and 1,000 hesitations. Why? Because they're going to, come and get you. Nor does it appear to me, to be outside the purpose, since this matter draws it from me, to dispute the following chapter about which confederations are to be trusted more, those made with a republic and those made with a prince. So I was wrong. I have to admit that I made a mistake, and that mistake is I originally counted the books, and I counted 58 books, and I wrote down 58. And apparently, I can even show you that this is my, 58, 58, and my note, I wrote it down, and I counted them, and I realized, oops, I did it again. So my next video will be 59, because it technically is 59 because of the 50, plus that I said 59 plus. But I made an error, and that's my goof. This is... I should have to go back and fix that chapter at the introduction here. I said 58. I gave the number. Now, I've been talking about it all this time. So, okay. So next chapter we'll be dealing with 59, about whether it's the confederations, about the question of confederation, who's trusted more, the prince or republic. Stop. Any questions, criticisms, comments, please put them there. It's like, oh, you goof, how could you mistake the number of chapters? Because I just looked at the book and counted the chapters, and oops, I missed one. So I will be doing the next one then. Okay, so put the comments, put your criticisms, and when I see them, I'll respond to them when I get to it. If you've liked it, hit the like button. Please hit the like button. It helps the algorithm. It does. If you've comment or like or share, if you liked it, share it far and wide. Share it in your social media. Share it in your friends. Bring it to their attentions. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Encourage your friends to come and subscribe and check out the channel, check out the other videos. Another thing you can do is of course, if you didn't like it, you can always thumbs down. Yeah, you dumb idiot, you did it wrong. I'm going to give you a thumb down because you said 58. We're not 58, we got 59. Okay, we all make mistakes. We're all human in that sense. But say why in the comments you're criticizing so people can benefit and learn from it. Another thing you can do is, those of you who want to follow me on social media, you can follow the links below. Those of you who want to know more about me as a scholar and as an academic and as a researcher, you can check out the academic social media links below the social media links. And if you want to help me to pay what I do and contribute here to do what I do here in these videos and help me to subsidize this a little more, you can do so through subscribe to our Patreon, which the URLs are there below there to go to them. And if you want to help, the way you can do so is by buying a book and buying one of my books. The books are listed available. The currently listed books available on there, and you can do so by ordering it through your local bookstore, of course. But you can order to an online distributor like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Libris, Book Depository, or something like that. Or you can order it directly through the publishers. And with that, we turn next to 59. I'm mad at myself about this. Okay, so take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.